Video time. Let's make a video. The first thing I might go to is a clip of my last podcast, where it was very short. It was supposed to be just one podcast, ended up being two. Second part was just the audio of my last YouTube video that I put out, the one that's on my YouTube page as my opening video. But that's supposed to be all connected. But the first part was I just did it in a podcast instead of doing a video style. Just because I put a podcast out that day by mistake. Doesn't matter. But because I did that, I chose to make a new podcast, and I answered a viewer's question on the podcast. So I'll play that clip first just to get that out of the way so you can hear a response. And then from there, we're going to go to the topic of today, which I'll play a small clip of Edward Snowden on Russell Brand's podcast on Luminary. It was just about very small, it says in there. And it's not going to be about, what Edward Snowden's popular for being working for the NSA and being a whistleblower, trying to tell the population that they're spying on us every second and every minute of every day, and being under some extreme duress and accusations and penalties and whatever after that, which really makes it look justified, makes it bring a lot of makes it look legit. In so many words, basically what he's saying is true. So, but that's all I'm going to talk about. He talks about how more attractive conspiracies are the satanic worship and occult and reptilian and alien and different very appealing negative emotion manipulating topics, let's say. Whereas he says the more real conspiracies are the ones right in your face that they have laws to protect about and all that. That's not what I'm going to be talking about. But I do want to talk about what the initial thing he says is. But anyways, after that clip plays, I'll point out exactly what I'm going to talk about. So first, let's just get to the response, and then from there, I got quite the video for you today. It's gonna be pretty fucking awesome, if I do say so myself. Alright, everybody, welcome to Ceremonial Witchcraft. I am the guy who invented this fucking podcast and this spirituality, I guess, so to speak. Corey LeBlanc, or the Ceremonial Witch, whichever you choose. Doesn't matter to me. I don't know what happened, but I was biking this morning to Tim Hortons and to go to the pharmacy with my wife. And then when I came home, I noticed on YouTube I had a video that was uploaded through Spreaker. Short for Think and Grow Rich was what the acronym was for, and it was just something I titled my recordings for my last podcast. So somehow I clicked on the podcast in my pocket, because my phone doesn't lock, because anytime I'm uploading a recording and my phone locks or something else touches the screen, it stops the upload, and it really stresses and pisses me out when I have to keep redoing it. So I don't have my automatic lock coming on my phone. But that comes with its own group of problems. Like if I don't physically lock it, then I can butt dial people, text people, or I guess apparently start podcasts from my pocket. So my apologies for anybody who checked that out, thought that was going to be a real video and just heard some of the middle content of an old episode. So that's my mistake. So that has prompted me to delete that and try to make a new one. Now I have a little bit of content I could put on here, which was from my last YouTube video, which is only a 20-some minute video. And it was me adding on to my other video as well. But the way it went together was pretty good. And it was to explain how magic works and, how magic works. And one way to conceive of the energy, because if you're doing magic and you're trying to manifest and alter your life and change circumstances, well, depending on how you are and how you learn, sometimes it's helpful to know how the process actually works. Because you might have a hard time believing in something if you can't really actually understand how it may work. So by understanding how it works, then it's easier for you to be able to do the process if you believe in how the outcome works out. So that was the purpose of doing that, and it's also something you can listen to be able to program your mind on how this works and that it's a possibility, and therefore you can start actually making change in your life. Now, after making that video, I just put that on my channel as my first video to come up, and it was great because then I went up to 86 subscribers. Now I'm back down to 85, but that's okay. I love everybody who subscribes, even the ones who unsubscribe and resubscribe later. It's all gravy, baby. But yeah, once again, a big shout out to everybody who takes the time to view, comment, like, and subscribe to this channel, and or do all those things to my podcast as well. It's greatly appreciated. It really is one of the things I really enjoy the most. But I received a comment about that, and it was a gentleman saying, I see it in a different way or more of an expansion. So that's what I want to get into, because everybody knows I go through the comments on my channel, and I use them as a way to start a dialogue or start a lesson or start a teaching or whatever. Oh, that hurt. Oh, I just lost you guys, and you guys came down and smashed my foot. Sorry about that. All right, but now I'm going to get through that comment, and it's by a gentleman. Maybe I won't say his name. I'll keep it, secret, because a lot of people don't seem to like when I talk about their comments or not. But, I mean, obviously you can go my last video and see this stuff, but I won't mention the name here. So the person said, I have a different take on how it works. Well, really, just expands on yours. I like to think that by manipulating the collective subconscious through will of intention, you're narrowing down the percentage of possibility futures for yourself. That's what I think. When starting out, you should start with things that you already have a decent chance of attaining, even without using a magical practice, and then open it up to less probable outcomes. Just my opinion, though, which is great. And, obviously I appreciate the comment, and, whether people have the same or a different view than me, I still love comments nonetheless. And yeah, we can talk about our differences and how they actually might connect and be the same, which is something I try to do in my response. So very seldomly will you ever see someone comment on my channel and me not give a response, especially a short response. So I have a very hard time saying anything in a short period or amount of time. Anyway, so my Ceremonial Witchcraft's response. I like your expansion and or another way to explain it. The future you and pathways that you may have exist from your choices, thoughts, parents' thoughts, friends' thoughts, and so on. These are all possibilities, such as when you were a child, what you wanted to be, then when you got a bit older, then the teenage you, then the college you or young adult you, then you later up until whatever age you are now. Plus your parents' expectations that when you were a child and then when you were in your teens and what they wanted for you. So I agree and never thought of it that way. I believe it's along the same lines, though, because these ideas were given energy and created on the astral, or implant, which is the same thing, or they were implanted in your subconscious. But depending on your choices and changing what you want, they don't manifest because they weren't continually giving energy. So just stop there for a second. What I mean by that is, as a kid, you want to be an astronaut, you start putting things on, maybe you create that pathway. You're going to become an astronaut one day. And if you really stuck to that, started looking at astronomy books and learning and getting really good grades, and then you followed all the hardest classes in school, and you started sending letters to the colleges that are more prestigious for that path and all that, then maybe you create that outcome and you become that astronaut. But then as you get older, you start playing a sport. Maybe you want to become a hockey player. So you stop giving energy into the astronaut thing and you start doing the hockey thing. So that's what I'm trying to say. And then maybe your parents at the same time, they like the idea of you becoming an astronaut, but then when you became a hockey player, your father was like, oh, I rather that. So he gives that more energy. So his energy into that, seeing you, visualizing you as being that is in the astral, as long as yours and everybody, there's energy growing within that idea. Anyways, this is why we can end up doing similar jobs and similar financial situations as our parents, because we saw this growing up and it programmed us. So what I mean by that is we can think we want to become these things all we want, but then at the end of the day, when we get through school, if we haven't put enough energy into that and really focus and put our will and all our actions were aimed at becoming that, then we might just drift off our path and then get a job, and then we start playing out what we saw our parents go through. just going from job to job, struggling, paying bills, whatever the case is. The system I do in the neophyte grade, we don't manifest and only do practices that allow us to break this connection to our previous programming and thought forms during initiation. So we can begin to choose for ourselves what we want ourselves. So that is just simply saying that the things you do in the neophyte, you're meant to ground yourself, to make yourself the middle pillar, to depolarize yourself so that you don't think these things are good, these things are bad, and that any thought form you may have created at this point that are bad and or good, that you break free from so that you can figure out what you truly want within you. I agree that when we begin, we should focus solely on one intent at a time, but I believe there's essential spiritual practices that should be done that aren't for manifestation and in the beginning, so you can find out what we truly want and might be programmed once. So what I mean by programmed once is something that you think you wanted that is really a projection from a parent or an idea that, is cool. Like your friends all thought it was cool, and so you are following on that line, but then you achieve it, and then potentially it doesn't give you that sense of, fulfillment. And that's where I write next is I've experienced this, achieving something I thought was my purpose and part of my path, but didn't satisfy. And I realized that it was programmed idea from my childhood. But either way, whether we achieve what we think we want and it's not right, or we do exercises that allow us to figure out what we want and don't want, we reach the same end. Thank you for the comment. I appreciate it, and for the view. So that was my comment. And so the last thing I said there was simply just whether or not this is kind of my argument for someone who, whenever I talk about manifesting stuff, and Thunder Wizard would say you need to find what your soul wants, your purpose, your path, your soul desires. I think the word he uses. And I say, well, you can do that. Find out what your soul desire is and try not to, or if you start manifesting money to pay your bills and you start thinking that there's a certain job you want, so you're trying to manifest that, and then you get that job. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to realize, okay, well, this isn't my soul desire, but you still need to pay those bills anyway. So manifesting that money in the process isn't really going to harm you. It's going to help you, but you're going to realize what your path is by all the mistakes. We achieve more from our failures and our losses than we do from our successes. Our successes are only achieved from the failures that led us there. So that's kind of the point I'm making, is it doesn't matter whether you figure it out before you aim yourself at it, or you try aiming yourself in all these directions to see what you want, and by process of elimination you figure out what you want. Either way, we're getting to the same end, and it really depends on the person. But anyways, once again, I want to thank the person who sent that comment in. And the reason I like to talk about the astral way just as much, if not more, than the subconscious way is because I'm not going to pretend I know anything about, what's the word? Physics, that type of physics there. The fucking, give me a moment here. Let me figure out what I'm going to say here. All right, quantum physics is the word I'm thinking of. So there are many theories within quantum physics. Unless you're a quantum physicist, it's really silly to really cite anything like I know quantum physics or this is quantum physics or whatever the case is. But one of the things that they know and explain and have proven is that we are kind of in two universes, two places simultaneously. Even though we can't realize it, we can't comprehend that because it's not linear, and we think in linear ways, like we start here, we end here, right? We start at 0, we go to 100, and then we're done. Whereas there's like two yous, whether that's the subconscious version of you where you're sleeping is somewhere else off, or it's something more like the astral plane. That, or how I explain how magic works is one of the main things I like to explain how magic works is there's this astral plane where everything that you have in your realm right now, this physical realm, is also in that astral realm. So whatever plays out in the astral realm plays out down here. And through adding energy with symbolic representations. So you have a candle, and on that candle you put your intention in that candle that you want to make a lot of money. Well, through that you can make that manifest on that astral plane, and by making that manifest on the astral plane, it filters down here. And the reason why I bring up the quantum physics is simply to just state that I don't know much about it, but they do have theories and conclusions that they've proven that we are simultaneously in two realms, in two places at one time. So the reason I bring that up once again is just simply to give a little more credence and a little more accuracy to my theory of the astral plane, which has been a theory that's been around a lot longer than most people would like to admit. Now, it hasn't been quantified or proven by physics or by science like it has been recently, but nonetheless, witches and people of magical practitioners of the past have known this and have explained it this way. And now this has changed in our new age, has been changed into the subconscious mind. And then there's all these other theories about parallel universes and all these possibilities. And I think they're all just derived from the same concept, just slightly expanded differently depending on the person who's explaining it, depending on their view of the world and how their experiences have been and how they've, what they've done in their life, basically, so to speak. Meaning, like, the person who sent me the comment thinks that he's got all these possibilities, and this is just my interpretation of what he wrote. I could be completely off, and if I am, I hope he corrects me or someone else does. But there's all these possibilities for him in the astral, and he can pick which one of those play out, or wherever in the subconscious mind, in the collective subconscious, as he puts it. Those are all there. They're all possibilities for him to play out. Whichever one he wants to, he can actively do something that will give energy to one of those circumstances to play out. And that's why he says he can first do the things that he already has a good foothold on, a good experience with, knows that, is very much possible, and then from there expand out by going the path of the ways that aren't so easily maybe using magic or whatnot, which is a great theory. And to me, the only thing I was trying to prove in my comment is I like that idea, and I think it's possible, and I think it's the same thing I'm trying to explain, except what I'm trying to explain is how those ideas got there in the first place, how all those potentials were put into the astral for him. And so what I mean by that is all those ideas were put in the astral through him, his parents, whoever gave energy, visualization, and emotion into the ideas of what this person may or may not be when they're older, if that's the example we're still using. And if they're going to be healthy, and if they're going to be rich, if they're going to be poor, if they're going to be a ladies' man, if they're going to be fat, they're going to be ugly, whatever the case is, whatever was given the most energy has created up there. And all these possibilities are still up there, but the ones that have the most energy are the ones currently playing out, meaning by your words, by your actions, by what you project, banish, deny, by what your self-talk plays on in the back of your mind all day long. By controlling those small things, you can pick throughout those choices. So what happens is when we're on an autopilot and we're slowly going through our life over and over, doing the same things, going to work, coming back, we're putting energy in the thought that we're going to be doing this. But if one day you say, no, I reject it, I'm going to be at this job for the rest of my life, and I accept that I'm going to find a better job that fulfills me on an emotional level, physical level, blah, 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 blah. And then you start saying that every day as an affirmation. Then you start creating energy into either one of the other paths that maybe you've already created, or a new path. And what I was trying to say about the neophyte and my system is that all those other thought forms that were created up there, because some of them might be great, might be the ones you want, but some of them might be created by your parents that have type of hold on you. Well, by doing the practice, by doing the archangel invocation and the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which has nothing to do with anything evil for any skeptics out there, it literally is a ritual that helps you break free from other people's thought forms, thought processes, ideas, whatever the case is. And it gives you the ability to choose for yourself what you want yourself, and then make your own energetic destinies up there in the subconscious, in the astral, whatever you want to call it. You can create your own and not go by the ones that were already created for you, is what I was trying to say with that comment, is that me and the person who wrote the comment have the same idea, except he's going by that those are already there, created. Who knows, maybe he thinks they're by a god or goddess or somebody else, but in my experience, those things are created by us and the people we surround ourselves with. All right, sorry about that. My wife came in just to bring some laundry, so I had to take a little break, step away. But sometimes it's okay, you get some more thoughts. But anyway, so yeah, before I ended, I was trying to explain my explanation to my comment that when I expanded on his comment. So, like I was just saying, I think we have the same idea. So, whether you're talking about these multiple realities that are all in possibility, and whichever one you focus on, you bring into being, into reality. Whether that's the concept, or we're simply, because right now you have a reality that's up there that's playing out in that astral. And like I said, I just talked about quantum physics real fast, just because they like to say, or it's like I said, it's a working theory that we're in two places at once technically. Well, I like to use that as the explanation for the astral plane, and how if you create enough energy into an idea that you want to play out and manifest within your life, if you create that on the astral plane, well, then nature will filter and make that happen here within this realm. And that astral plane is kind of like this elusive place that's always operating at the same time as this one. And it's just like, it's like a safeguard. It's like all the ideas of everything, all the magic has to be filtered through the moon. Well, the moon is your subconscious mind. The moon is the astral plane on the model of the tree of life. So it all kind of connects and makes sense. But so, like I said, the only difference in what he was saying and what I was saying, I think, is simply that he is not going as far as I am. He's saying that there's all these potential possibilities that you can be, or what you want to play out in your life. They're already created up there. You have the conscious ability to choose with your will, or whether it's just through your actions here in the physical, or using symbolic representations, aka magic. What I'm saying is, we've created those. Those are already there, and we still have the ability to create new ones and make new ones. So we're really talking about the same thing here. And all that's to say is, this is how we consciously choose. So once again, throughout your day-to-day, whenever you're going through your day-to-day life, all the little thoughts going on in the background of your head, these are the things that are reinforcing and creating these outcomes that are going to play out for you. This is the energy that's putting into the steps that are already the reality that's already being manifested within your life right now, is going by the little things you do, the little things you say every day, the little thoughts you have. All the actions you take throughout your day are confirming what stays in the astral and is playing out, and what isn't playing out in the astral. Meaning, if you continuously think you're always going to be poor, you're always going to be broke, you're never going to be pretty, you're never going to lose weight, well, you're going to keep giving energy to the you on the astral plane who never loses weight. But if you're able to change that, whether it's through affirmations, through symbolic ritual, like putting on a candle that you are going to manifest something, and then you put enough energy into that and you create it on the astral, then it will create itself down here after. So that's the only thing I was trying to get at. Like, for example, this episode was just to, because I put it on an episode today by accident on Spreaker, so I felt like I should actually put a real episode out. So all this is to do is just to explain further on how magic works, how these multiple realities and possibilities and timelines, how they exist and what they are. And in my estimation, it's the realities that were created by us, our parents, our friends, all the thoughts that we gave emotion and form to. Basically, we create thought forms. And if you want to find a way out of this, if you want to stop that process and you want to be able to do this on your own, then one of the best ways is doing ceremonial magic, or a type of witchcraft that gives you the ability to consciously pick what you want to manifest in your life. And one of the best ways to do that, obviously, is, like I've been saying, if you watch stuff that prove magic's correct, that magic works, rather, that magic is real, that you are someone who can consciously take control of their life, if you get that programming in your mind, then you'll be able to start doing this process. But there's been these long-standing traditions and things like ceremonial magic that directly address how to change this. And, we can speculate on how we think it works all day long, but the people who created these had a really good understanding on how this stuff works, and they created these rituals and these exercises exactly for that purpose for us. So it's easier for you to be on the astral or change the astral, or it's that line right between when you're in trance, so it's easier for you to be on the astral or change the astral or take stuff into your subconscious mind. That's why reading an affirmation right when you wake up a bunch of times or right before you go. Where I wasn't on, but I'm just going to keep going right from where you're doing your symbolic representations. You're best to be kind of in between the worlds, between the conscious and the subconscious. That line right between when you're in trance, so it's easier for you to be on the astral or change the astral or take stuff into your subconscious mind. That's why reading an affirmation right when you wake up a bunch of times or right before you go to bed a bunch of times, that's right where you're between those two worlds, between the subconscious and the unconscious, between the astral and the physical. So all these things are very much connected, and it's a good way to look at it. So that was my expansion of that guy's question, comment. And once again, I really appreciate that comment. And now I'm just going to play the video that I created that generated that comment, and so you guys can hear it for yourselves. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and hope you have yourselves a great fucking day. That was the comment I responded to. All right, so let's just do this, I guess. Instead of me getting into some prelude about what we want to talk about, I'll just fucking get right to this little short clip of Edward Snowden talking with Russell Brand. And once again, again, it's not about the conspiracy. It's really not conspiracy. We know they're spying on us. Every second commercial on YouTube is about it. Now, I can get into many things about that. The fact that now, because it's open knowledge that they're spying on us, and we know that, and everybody knows that's common knowledge, how it's probably being used, spun in their favor now, how they're, just playing it off, how these companies are going to start selling us protection so that we feel like we're not being spied on, so on and so forth. I won't even get into that. That's up to you to figure out. I'm here to give you spiritual advice, not how to fuck with the government advice. And quite simply put, if you start working on yourself and start fixing inside, you'll change your outside world. If you change yourself, if you change your circumstances, if you change you, that shit won't have to bug you. Now, depending on your line of work and what you're doing, and if you are someone who's actively worked on themselves and are actively in activism now as a result of working on yourself and starting these big movements, then we have something maybe to talk about on how to hide and do this shit under the radar with all these eyes on you. But once again, if you've done this work, if you've done the work, transformation, self-improvement, you'll get the answers you need. I truly believe that. And looking into these conspiracies saying they're spying on us and all that, when you really have no reason for them to spy on you, if you're not really because it's not right. Don't get me wrong. It's not right that the NSA and the governments are spying on us and collecting our data mainly for advertising that give us what we want, so that we always have what we want to look for and our minds don't get to expand. That's my main beef with it. Is the fact that when I turn on YouTube, it's going to show me all these old videos I've already watched and some differentiating videos that they approve, that they think is okay within the same genre of what I watch. And if I wasn't the type of person I am, open-minded and able to search and go beyond that, if I'm just the type of person that scrolls down and says, what am I going to watch today? Then it would be a problem. But I can search beyond that. But still, there are things put in place to restrict the amount of information I can receive as well. And that's where I start having a problem with this technology. But nonetheless, even saying that, okay, the best knowledge you can receive is from within yourself. You're connected to this divine, this subconscious, this reality maker, even your shadow side. All this shit is connected to you, and that can give you loads of information that nobody can spy on you for. And so if you do the work properly and you're not just an information junkie or a conspiracy junkie, then if you're those things, then that's okay. Some of those things will lead you to better places and down this path eventually. So I'm not knocking it, but it's those type of people that sometimes like to freak out about the fact they spy on us. And once again, it's wrong. They shouldn't be fucking spying on us. We're in agreement about that. But before we get to the place, and I get it, it's time sensitive. If we keep allowing them to infringe on our rights, then we're never going to have any rights left. And if we just say, well, fuck it, we'll just work on ourselves, and by that time, then, we'll deal with it then. Well, then it might get so far past that we can't do anything about it. But I don't believe that. I think there's always something to fucking do. So that's just my opinion on the matter. I think if you work on yourself primarily and put something like that as a secondary project potentially on what you can do, you really got to look into law, sovereignty rights, and get involved in your community and get down to places where they make bills and statutes and see what you can do to, potentially be a voice and then rally people that are of like mind and do it in a proper way and blah, 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 blah. And I think that is something worth doing. But there's so many other things that you can do first to fix your own individual life instead of getting on that topic. But once again, it doesn't take away any of the urgency and any of the importance and any of the wrongness that they are spying on us every second, every day. And it's legal, and it's right in our face, and everybody knows about it. People are making jokes about it. Big Brother this, blah, 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 blah. It's pretty shitty, to say the least. But anyways, that's not what this is about. That's my little disclaimer about all that. I'm not for or against. Well, I'm against, straight up against. But I don't think it's going to serve anybody if we're just beginning our path. I think we need to go down certain alleys and avenues and then transform ourselves and get to a better, more depolarized state before we can even do anything about that. And then you might get to a point where, turning off the fucking phone and the TV and the devices that spy on you is the best fucking thing you can do, and only using them to market your stuff. Now, if it's infringing upon your rights and your ability to advertise your own business to make money, then that's a huge deal. And that's that's something that we should all be behind. Small businesses trying to make a living, and they're being fucked and suppressed because they're being seen by whoever and being like, no, go to Amazon and don't go to your local shops and shit like that. Then there's a problem. And that's just a hypothetical. I don't know if that's actually happening. I can see it probably happening, but I don't know. Anyways, without further ado, show this small little clip. It's going to illustrate my point about, just let them say it, fuck.
The idea that the bad guys are at a pizza parlor, you can kick in the door and flush them out, right? You just need to burn down that tower that's at the end of your block and everything will be better. That's a world that's more attractive because you have identifiable figures who are responsible for your plight, and you have the ability to sort of push them out of the way and correct things. If only you guys would come together. But the funny thing is, if we do come together, we can unwind all of these plights we face, even the extraordinary ones, but it takes focus and sustained attention on problems that are intentionally made abstract and boring by these people that are holding conferences at Davos, right? It is exciting and visceral to think about satanic rituals. Nobody gets hot thinking about the interest rate.
Satanic rituals. Interest rate? Fuck off.
However, Snowden's ultimate message is an optimistic one. It requires a kind of discipline from us that we need to be able to look at these problems in a calculated, less emotional way.
All right, so where can I put this again so that you guys can see me and something sunny, whatever. Okay. Oh. All right, so that was the small point I wanted everybody to hear, was simply put what Snowden says. All of it is really good. You should check out the clip he has on his YouTube channel. That'd be Russell Brand. He's one of the channels I watch. If you can siphon through all the shit that my kids have put on there, go through there often and unsubscribe to some of the shit they subscribed to in the past. It seems they still go on my channel and subscribe to some of their people they like to subscribe to, whatever, it just is what it is. You'll see all the shit I watch. Which one of the things I watched yesterday was Grant Morrison, which the things he was talking about, I recorded small little 2-minute clips, and I'm going to use that to also illustrate the same point, but more on why to do magic and not why magic has been made a cult. And I just want to stress this point for anybody getting into this, because I noticed, especially with my channel, I went up to 86, went back down to 85, down to 84, back up to 85. And I don't know why that happens. I don't know if that is me losing the same people and them coming back, or me just getting new people after I lose people. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I do know some of the things I tend to talk about is controversial, and I do know that people tend to like my stuff at certain points. Some people have said to me in the past anyways that the way I approach the topic of magic is in a very straightforward, kind of easy enough way and not evil way. And I've had friends, one I mentioned before, Justin, but I've had many other friends say the same thing, I like this video that you made, I like how you explain this, but then they come back to me after watching a few other videos that demonize the occult and blame the occult for a lot of the bad things happening in the world. And so one of the main things I like to do now, on top of trying to teach people spirituality through the ways that I've learned how to do specific techniques that have helped my life, is to help reduce, remove, and banish away this idea that the occult is evil. Is there evil things in the occult? Of course. Is there evil people that have been occultists? Of course. But there's also evil people that have been Christian. It wasn't that long ago that there was a cardinal who was caught by Vatican police for having drugs and gay orgies. You know what I mean? And these are the same people that are trying to tell people that homosexuality is wrong. Likewise, I think you may even see it in the clip I have of Robert Seffer I'm going to play here shortly, about Muslims. And the thing against Muslims, but how they cover up their women and how the women aspect of the occult has been demonized. and has been shunned. And Robert Seffer, this is one of the things I love looking into, but it's very hard to prove. But I mean, he's got some archaeological, anthropological, I guess, evidence of women worship, of women running things a long fucking time ago, probably during the age of Taurus. I'd say before the age of Aries, because Taurus is ruled by Venus, and so on and so forth. But that's speculation. And he goes into some various things of how the snake was the emblem for that, because it's the Kundalini rising, it's this life force, it's this, Lilith has been deemed, dirty shit like that. Eve, another example, Lucifer. Lucifer is a name for Venus, which is a goddess. Lucifer Morningstar turned into this devil person. And, if you put the moon on top of a girl's head, it looks like two horns. We turned that into a man, an evil man, but I think it begun as a woman. But the main point of my video today is going to be what he said, that it's more attractive to people to focus on satanic, evil occultists, evil conspiracies that fill the narrative of satanic worship, of occultist people, not God-fearing or God-worshipping people, Christian people. It's the opposite. It's people that do ceremonial witchcraft, let's say, are the problem with the world. I'm self-proclaimed Illuminati. Sometimes I say I am the Illuminati, and I made it very clear why I say that I'm not actually some individual who's part of this Illuminati elite going around trying to corrupt the world and kill off most of the population for whatever my destructive ends might be. I am an illuminated person who is attempting to become even more illuminated. I take on that identity of the Illuminati so I can grab hold of the power that the people place in that idea, that thought form, and I use that to fuel some of my magic. Nonetheless, I think the Illuminati, like other things around the world, have helped our culture form. But I'm not going to get into that because that's going to be a very unpopular thing, and people are going to grasp onto this that aren't open-minded enough to understand where I'm coming from. I'm going to say, what? You think the Illuminati's good? Fuck this guy, unsubscribe. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That's the kind of thing I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to say that that's what we shouldn't be doing. We shouldn't be looking at the occult. Because, the red herring concept, when you read a book, the most obvious person who did the crime, or the most obvious outcome, or the most obvious thing, explanation, rarely is. So we blame all the bad things in the world, the government, the elitists, the queen, the monarchy, the fucking hierarchies, all this shit. We say they're evil, reptilian, snake, draconian people fucking up the world. Where Snowden's point is these conspiracies are easy to latch on and easier to break down, and people like them, and it feeds into that archetypal idea that good versus evil. This is clearly evil, and this is clearly good. But when the government or the people that are in power are passing bills to make it legal to spy on us, as an example, when the thing that's supposed to protect us becomes that evil, that is something people rarely want to go in and involve themselves in. And if they do, they turn them into satanic worshiping whatever. And I'm not saying there isn't people out there that are worshiping Satan and doing it in a way of, I'm evil, and they're taking on that evil archetype. Obviously, there's people that do that. But what I'm trying to say is the occult has been demonized to keep people away from it for a fucking reason. And the main reason, I think, is because when you dive into this stuff, when you start figuring this stuff out, which I'm going to explain in a few minutes here, especially when it comes to the female aspect that has been demonized. I'm going to play Robert Seffer's video here for you, and I'm going to explain further on what he was explaining about in there, about Venus, about the goddess, about worshiping the female, about how the female can lead to illumination, which is why the mother, chaos, mother nature, the matrix, all these things have been demonized, but they're part of the woman that will help you get illuminated. Why these things are all made occult and evil is the reason that's what's holding us back. And I'm going to elaborate on this point further, but because there's a lot of things in the past that you had to sleep with a woman, and after sleeping with a woman, you become illuminated, especially for a male, that the priestess was passed something on to you. And I think there's some legitimacy in that. I think that's accurate. And I think for certain men, that might be how it works as well. Certain closed-minded people that can't. But I think there's something even more deep into this, because the two aspects, I talked about this in my last video about electricity, how we explain magic in terms of male, female, positive, and negative. Well, our minds, okay, if you do the simple, basic explanation we've all been using that's in the collective consciousness of subconscious and conscious, or unconscious and conscious mind. Well, that unconscious or subconscious is generally made female. Now, it makes more sense for me to have three parts: positive, negative, and neutral. And, the conscious mind, ideally, is your positive, your subconscious is your negative, and your unconscious would be the neutral part that just runs things, okay? But the subconscious can affect that unconscious to run things specific ways, and the conscious mind can tell the unconscious mind the conscious mind can instruct the subconscious mind on how to instruct the unconscious how to do things into your reality. And I think that's one of the best explanations on how to do this basic model, because it's way more complex than that, but that's a basic understanding of how the minds are. So this female enlightenment, the way to get through there, through the female, through the woman, okay, this works for male or female, because even in females, the conscious mind is technically positive or male. But by getting a communication with your subconscious mind, with that female, with that divine, with the gods. Julian James is a guy, and it's something that Grant Morrison refers to in the clips I'm probably going to show you. I think I have it recorded. He says, way back whenever the earliest writings of the Greeks and even of the Roman Catholics, when they heard the voice of God speaking to them, it wasn't necessarily the voice of God. Their corpus callosum, which connects the two hemispheres of the brain, wasn't connected yet, and it was in the process of becoming connected. And some people advance faster than others, and then through progression and genetics, and as two people, they're pretty smart. They have a baby, they teach that baby everything. That baby becomes more smart. That baby meets somebody else who's smart. They have babies. Every generation becomes more smart and smarter and smarter. Well, the same thing goes with how we've mutated, let's say. The corpus callosum started becoming something connected within all generations once the first people had it connected. But those people hearing that connection, hearing those thoughts that they thought was God speaking to them, was just the other hemisphere of their brain. But it doesn't mean that that's still not accurate, because that's the divine mind. That's where the gods and the goddesses are. That's the emotional brain. That's where these things reside within all of us simultaneously. So it's still not inaccurate. They're still speaking for God. Problem is whenever they claim to be speaking for God, and if they're no longer speaking for God, they're speaking for their own interests. But because of all the things they were right about, they're able to manipulate people, and that's just the nature of this fucking beast. But regardless of all that, there is a way to become enlightened through the female, which is through your subconscious mind, because that fucking thing can talk to you and tell you stuff, because it's connected to all subconscious minds, all that's lived, present, past, and future. And you can get information from that, and you can use that to your benefit. And if you have a question such as, well, how do I get past this barrier, them spying on us, how do we fix this problem? Well, the best way, I think, for you to get that information is to go deep into meditation, create the subconscious connection, and ask the question to yourself. You can use different symbolic ways, such as tarot, all these other divinations, to get answers if you'd like. And that's just a nice medium to start connecting and speaking to that part of your mind. But nonetheless, it's still the same result. You ask the question every single day, you go into a meditative state, and eventually you'll get a response. You'll figure it out, and it might not be easy, it might not be the best thing, but if you follow it through, I'm sure it will never lead you astray. But anyways, let's get into the clip from Robert Suffer real fast here, and then you'll see kind of what I was talking about, and I'll take it further from there. And then after that, I'm going to leave you with Grant Morrison clips that I may chime in on, because they're uber important. Some of them are some that I've played before, but they're very small, each one of them, but just loaded with great information that if you just take the few sentences that he says and you expand it. And you got to keep in mind, like, Robert Suffer is a serious anthropologist, and he's coming out and trying to not be very occult-like and say he believes in magic and so to speak, but he does grapple with a lot of concepts that a lot of people would say, wow, he's risking his reputation by talking about that. Grant Morrison, another very successful man to this day, writing things for DC Comics, Marvel, just the like, okay? filthy, well, I won't say filthy rich, but very, very wealthy. I don't know how rich he is, but he's done very well for himself. And he's on record multiple times, multiple places, giving fucking lectures about taking up magic, about getting Aleister Crowley books. Not the ones where he tells you to do a bunch of fucked up shit, but the ones that just give you the process of magic, doing the sigil magic, all these different magics. Because this is how we can become the counterculture and change your individual life, change yourself first, and then eventually change the culture. Because the one thing we can agree on is that we continuously want to make this thing better. You know, we're not trying to make this thing, we're just trying to make it better. And, you know, even though you can compare us to our past and say we're way better now, we're still living in things that aren't that great at the moment. And if this is a guy who's got lots to lose, his career, he could be not taken seriously ever again. But it doesn't matter to him. You know why? Because he knows magic. He can affect this shit. And it's like, okay, people's perspective might be fucked at me now, but I don't care. Here's a sigil to make sure I still get work even though I'm talking about magic. I don't know if that's what he did, but that's what I would do if I was in his position. That's what I plan on doing if it ever comes to that for me. But I just wanted to point out that these people have things to lose, and they still come out here and speak about these topics, which should give some lividity and, you know, some weight behind it. But Russell Brand, another good example of that. Matthew McConaughey is talking about not spirituality in the same sense that I talk about it, but, you know, Peterson, all these people, they have things they can lose, and they start getting too up in the sky, they can lose a lot of their followers. But if they think it's important enough, they go past those barriers and they do it anyways. And to just take all this and just say it's a cult, it's evil, it's bad, it's just been demonized and we should stay away from this stuff, is wrong. And it was done intentionally at some point, and I think now we're just following those same old orders, but not really understanding why they were made in the first place. And I think it takes a lot of study, because there's a lot of people out there claiming to be devil worshippers, satanic magic, doing dark arts, whatever, and you want to stay away probably primarily from that until you become depolarized and you can read between the lines and see, you know, whatever. But nonetheless, a lot of that's bullshit too. Sometimes I've seen it and I can give you proof, but I don't want to name drop. But there's been people that are Christians pretending to be dark magicians. But nonetheless, a lot of that's bullshit too. Sometimes I've seen it and I can give you proof, but I don't want to name drop. But there's been people that are Christians pretending to be dark magicians to demonize the arts so that you stay away from it. Like straight up. One of these days, maybe I'll name drop, but I know my video would get automatically fucking blocked if I said it. So I'm not going to say it. But nonetheless, that's happened. And that's proof of what is going on. And it's just, they don't want people touching this stuff for whatever reason. They feel this obligation to go around preaching Christ, programmed into them. And yet, if they did the rational and unbiased information searching research, then they could come to some of the same conclusions. Not all this stuff is meant to be done. Not all this stuff is great. But not all this stuff is demon worship and demonizing things. And, you know, Venus, Lucifer, this is a good example of how the planets, okay, it's one thing to take demons that were created as demons, potentially anyways, I don't know for sure. Maybe down the line they were eventually gods, and then they were demonized. I'm completely open to that option. But when it comes to the planets that are in the sky, and we turn those into demons, and we turn the gods, the Greek gods, into demons, when we start doing that shit, there's a fucking problem. And that's denying a part of ourselves as well, because those planets are as above, so below, as within, so without. They're within you. So if you're fucking saying Lucifer is a piece of shit, what you're calling the Venus within you, which is very close to the heart chakra, by the way, if you're calling something very close to you a piece of shit, you might want to stop doing that. But anyways, let's light this up and light the fires and kick the tires. Kick the tires, light the fires, Big Daddy. I forget what the line is for Independence Day. It just came to my head anyways. I don't know why I do that, but I gotta go with what it tells me to do. Anyways, here's Robert Seffer, very ending of on Atlantean Gardens. I think it's called The Fall of Lucifer. Now, the beginning of the video is pretty great too. A lot of RH negative talk and where it's condensed, which is great because it shows like right where I am in like the northeast of the United States and the southeast of Canada, and a little bit more centered, but it's very concentrated there, and then overseas and whatever, where all these people came from, and their emblem was the pentagram, and it's an amazing video. I didn't get into all that. I just did the ending where he gets into the Venus being Lucifer and the demonizing of women cultures through different organized religions, and how, it's made a cult, and we've been suppressing women, and by suppressing women, like, literally, we're also doing it symbolically within our own bodies. And that woman within our own bodies, that subconscious mind, whether you're a man or female, when you start suppressing that, whether it's in the book, it's Eve, it's Lilith, whether it's the Mary Magdalene, it's the mother, whether it's Venus, whether it's Aphrodite, whether it's Ishtar, Inanna, whether it's Frida, whoever it is, if you start denying that and suppressing it, you're doing it to yourself. And she's not going to hook you up, and even worse, it's going to fuck you up. And you'll hear Grant Morrison talk about people getting fucked up by their own dark sides, and this is part of that. It's all connected.
We can now start the actual topic of today's episode, which revolves around the concept of Lucifer. As many people are aware, the word Lucifer simply means light bearer, and is a Latin name for the planet Venus in its morning appearances, as it's the first visible bright star one sees before the sun rises. In a mythological and religious context, it is associated with a variety of goddesses, which all are aligned with the planet Venus. One of the symbols associated with the goddess is called the Rose of Venus, or the Pentagram of Venus, because every 8 years it makes a pentagram shape in the sky when you trace its orbit. This is the same pentagram, or five-pointed star, used by the Druze people that I mentioned earlier, as well as other occult organizations. It is also why goddesses such as the Sumerian Inanna or the Babylonian Ishtar is represented by an 8-pointed star for the 8 years. So the number 5 and the number 8 is closely associated with Venus and therefore the goddess. I'd also like to point out that for every 8 Earth years, Venus goes around the sun 13 times. And the number 13 is also associated with the lunar cycle, another goddess affiliation, and why the number has been deemed as evil, unlucky, or in some cases banned outright. The word Satan means adversary, and from the perspective of the patriarchal civilizations, the secrets of the goddess were to be demonized and hidden, which is what was behind things like the burning of the witches and genocide of the Cathars, who were Gnostics. And gnosis just means knowledge or wisdom, but not the kind from books, but the enlightenment that comes from sacred union with a goddess. The imagery of a horned deity can be traced back to the god Pan, where we get the term for horny from, as he was also affiliated with carnal acts, which is part of the goddess mysteries. So you'll come to find that much of what is called evil or forbidden, including in the Garden of Eden, is because it hides a valuable treasure. The same way that modern Islamic republics hide a woman from head to toe under a black cloth, something that was never done during the time of the Prophet Muhammad. And in the earliest Islamic art, the female body is painted on the walls, totally nude. There are many examples of this, one being in eastern Jordan, built around 730 by a future caliph, considered one of the most important examples of early Islamic art and architecture, which at one time was a large castle, but today not much remains besides these frescoes, mainly on the ceiling, with dancing scenes of naked women, and above what was the bath chamber, we find the first known representation of heaven on a hemispherical surface, where the mirror image of the constellations is accompanied by the figures of the zodiac. So it seems there's an increasing suppressive element that has overtaken Islam and hidden its esoteric secrets from the public, but the Muslim leadership seems to be exempt from, whether it be the royal family of Saudi Arabia, which flies in supermodels, actresses, and strippers from around the world for private engagements, or the Muslim elite in Iran, who legalize prostitution with underage girls, but call it temporary marriages, where you can get married overnight and divorce the next day, keeping everything nice and legal. And at the same time, not doing much about acid tossed in the face of women who expose a bit too much of their hair in public. My point is not to make a political statement about any one modern religion, but to draw back the curtain a bit, as I could say the same about Roman Catholicism, whose highest clergy is constantly caught up in scandal, the type that they openly preach against. So it's safe to say that the goddess element has been suppressed or totally eliminated from organized spirituality, and yet, according to all ancient writers, was the central focal point of every civilization going back into the Pleistocene, or Ice Age. And while secret societies were set up to continue to honor the goddess and to protect certain lineages, these same organizations have been infiltrated and have not only degraded into acts of perversion and degeneracy, but actively plot to dilute and destroy the same noble bloodlines that they were set up to uphold and protect. My name is Robert Sepper. I'm an anthropologist. My published work is available on Amazon. My books make a great gift. If you'd like to support my work, you can do that.
All right, so you heard it there. There's quite a bit in that it would take me about 4 or 5 videos to break down. But just as a side note, what he stated about the Muslims and Iran doing with women, flying them in or marrying them and then divorcing them, and then he didn't say what that was on that newspaper, but it was a Vatican cops busted High Cardinal for having gay orgies and drugs. It was what was written on there. And I'm going to play something actually from, it's going to be another Russell Brand clip with I can't get his name is on the tip of my tongue right now. Darren Brown. And what Darren Brown says about the Greek gods and honoring the Greek gods and how they did it, how they didn't believe there was an actual god in the sky, but an aspect of themselves. And by honoring this god, they would honor that part of themselves. And in this way, if they didn't honor that part would kick them in the ass. It gets into the shadow a little bit, which is what my other person at the end of the video, Grant Morrison, is going to get into. About the shadow a little bit as well, but he even gives the example of how a high priest goes off about homosexuality and they get caught with a red boy, and this thing literally shows you the real evidence of that happening. So it gives a lot of validity to what Robert Sepper just said. A small little clip, about 2 minutes long. I know this is already running pretty long, like over an hour now, but there's just so much in there, and it all centers around how a cult was made, was demonized, and more importantly, how suppressing the woman, suppressing women, where the Muslims are literally suppressing the woman. They're suppressing. He says the Garden of Eden was made evil, but things that are made evil normally hold a beautiful gem of wisdom in there. And then he said, much like how Muslims cover women from head to toe, they're covering this beautiful gem by honoring the woman, and not in a perverse way, such as like porn or some of our TV we watch lately, but by honoring the woman and coming to terms and realizing you need both. You need men and women. I don't want to come off as women are more important than men. Oh, I've said that many times in many podcasts and many videos, and I still believe that. But the way we're going about suppressing the woman in our culture, we're suppressing our whole subconscious mind by suppressing the divinity within the female. We have God and it's a man, Christ, a man. Even whenever you get into Saturn and Zeus and all this, it's men. But you have to equally do Venus. You have to do the moon, the mother, the goddess. And that's why I said you only need 2 main women deities, because the women are more powerful. That's why we need more men deities to encompass all, whereas the 2 women can cover it all, which isn't true. There's much more deities and goddesses than that. But my point is, by suppressing these planets, these energies, these deities, these goddesses, we're suppressing ourselves. We're getting ourselves into trouble. We're making our dark side even bigger by suppressing all this shit. And this is a good example of that. And back to the beginning where Edward Snowden said, people much rather the satanic conspiracies versus the legitimate legal conspiracies that aren't conspiracies anymore because it's straight up happening. They're much attracted to that. But the more people do that, the more they are suppressing a part of themselves. And, they're being distracted with these other conspiracies that are literally suppressing their own power. And then the other people are getting away with these legal conspiracies to spy on us and all these other things, like getting rid of our rights, because we're all tied up in trying to fight these evil forces, these evil cult, this devil, this Lucifer, which is really an aspect of ourselves that we're suppressing. Do you see the irony in that? It's incredible. So I'm going to play another clip real fast here. And then, I don't know, it's running pretty long. I might not even dissect anymore. I think I got my point across. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Obviously, what Jung was very keen on was that we integrate all of these. The self is something that's whole and integrated, because when we try and shut off aspects of ourselves, they become these the shadow, the parts of us that are uncomfortable, but it's the unconscious parts of us that own us, of course. And the goal of, I think, certainly Jungian therapy, I think generally therapy is to not necessarily grab a cure, but it's to have a more meaningful dialogue with the self and all those different aspects of the self, and not just try and shut them off. So you're aiming for sort of a consciousness, but it's a consciousness of these things that are otherwise unconscious, parts of yourself that need to be brought into the mix and honoured, which is why the Greeks with their gods, I mean, they did it so well that they didn't really believe that these gods were God in the way that we think of God nowadays. They were aspects of the self, essentially, that needed honouring. So you would honour the goddess of whatever, the god of creativity or eros, because if you didn't, that bit's going to come back and bite you, which is what happens in the self. The TV evangelist who rages against homosexuality and then gets caught in bed with a Ren boy sometime later, and his career's over. Same thing, just shutting off one aspect of his personality.
Turns out I was a bit gay during that, and I overreacted. Yeah, that's right. And
it's the same thing. It's the narratives. We're living by those narratives. But it's just exactly what you were saying, but just internal.
As much as I really want to just dive deeper into this and keep going, I'm just going to end it there because it's pretty long, and I don't want to take up everybody's time too much. But in conclusion, I want to say that, while trying to get into spirituality and the divine and all this, be wary of, dark forces and satanic stuff, but also be wary of anybody telling you that magic, dark, occult arts, the goddesses, the demons, and all this stuff. Be wary of that. Try to have an open mind when you come into it. I'm not telling anybody to go out there and start worshiping demons because they're once gods. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying when it comes to the planets and the stars, have your own opinion. You have to do research and you have to come to your own conclusions about these things. So take in the information you take in, but don't suppress any of these gods, goddesses. And that includes the things you learned from your organized religions. That includes the stuff from organized religion, such as Christianity and all that, because these things are now in the collective consciousness. And in my estimation, some of these deities that are in Christianity are part of us as well. They're different names for different gods already. So even to go out there and suppress Jesus or Mary Magdalene or any of these things is also a mistake. But to take it all in as a whole, as stories and archetypes that were to describe us, but to suppress women, think women are evil and we're the problem with the world, and to suppress homosexuality and to suppress any of these fucking cultures or anything in the past, you gotta be careful because you're gonna suppress something about your dark side. I'm gonna leave you with a bunch of clips from Grant Morrison that I put together. Some might have a little bit of overlap. I'll try to reduce that, but he's gonna get into both the dark side, how magic works, the individual, how it was a structure, the corpus callosum thing. I said he's going to get into many of these things that were already talked about by the three people I've already put on here before, kind of Russell Brand, and that's why I love Russell. He interviews all these people and he gets so much great information out of them, and there's so many great ideas that come from them. You'd be well served by watching Russell's stuff, to be honest, and anybody else, Darren. Robert Suffer and Grant Morrison, like all these people, they have something to lose, yet they're coming out here and talking about these things that are not often talked about because they're trying to help humanity. They're trying to recover something that's been driven occult and is being suppressed from us, and then we walk around free from any meaning in our life because we can't find it, because we were told that these things are all evil and to not do them. Yet whenever you start looking down these paths, you find out that none of this is really evil, and it's just ways of honoring us, our past, our ancestors, parts of ourselves. It's a way to communicate to the subconscious mind, that the female mind, that'll give you all the information, that'll make you become illuminated, activate that kundalini, all that. It's going to happen by doing this process. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, have yourselves a great fucking night.
Phil Heiner, Peter Carroll, that's more up to date, and you don't have to bother with that 18th century fucking language of that guy. But do the shit, and you will find it works. And we stand here now. This is the counterculture. We are the counterculture. This is like this shit. I went to something like this in 1987. There was Robert Anton Wilson, the whole deal. And I remember sitting in the audience thinking, fuck, rave is dead. Because it was that kind of thing. So that version of it's dead. The hippie version of it is dead. We stand here and we're looking ahead. What we're going to do. Abandon the personality is what I suggest. Get rid of the sense of self. Get rid of the sense of I and make yourself something bigger. Imagine that every time you want to learn something new is a new computer program. You can buy the operating system, the update. You can learn to fly a plane in 7 days according to neuro-linguistic programming. So why not? Let's do it. Do we want to change things, or are we just sitting here talking? No answer. Are we talking at all? Do we want to change things? Yeah, right, that's why we're fucking here, man. That is why we're here. So what are we going to do? If you want to change things, the first thing you have to change is yourself. Because if you don't change yourself, you will take on the world as if it's yourself and fuck up. You will really fuck up. Because if you don't understand your own dark side, if you don't understand your own weird, shitty side, if you don't understand the fact there's someone in there who will kill your mother, if need be, if you can't take that on, if you can't take that on board and realise that Charles Manson and me and you are not much different, that John Wayne Gacy and me, you're not much different except that he did it. There's those days where I'm going to kill that motherfucker, but we don't do it. But it's in us, and it's there, and so much of this is denial, that we have no dark side. The hippies and those lovely people in the rave era who were on ecstasy, they tried to pretend we have no dark side, and what happened was they get fucked up by their own dark side, as will always happen. So let's kiss our dark side, let's fuck our dark side, let's get him down there where he belongs. And he can tell us stuff, that thing's useful. But above all, let us become plex creatures, complex, superplex, able to take on new personality traits, able to take on new ideas, able to adapt, able to extend our boundaries into what was previously the enemy territory, until the point where we become what we once called our enemy and they are us, and there is no distinction. The same shit you've all read, put it into practice and found that it works. So here's my version of what happens. Doing the comic, I set up these characters. The whole thing was set up as an adventure story where there's some bad guys who live in another dimension who want to enslave us all, and there's some good guys who live in another dimension who want us all to have a good time. In the middle, there is us. And we're trying to obviously have a good time. Everybody wants to have a good time. Hitler wanted to have a good time. And we all want to have a good time. So we've got to understand that as a starter. The more I set up these dualities, the more I set these people against the opposition, the more it began to seem like a complete crock. And we'd been sold this nonsense of opposition. And I began to find, the closer I got to the end of the series, that the whole opposition element of it was the least meaningful, least important part of it, and that we've actually been deluding ourselves in a lot of ways. Beyond that, I find that we've been deluding ourselves in the worst way of all by believing in the individual. Right? Stay with me on this. Kafka, Orwell, Patrick McGowan in The Prisoner. Everyone told us the individual was the most important thing we could be. Everyone is fucking quirky these days. Every shit in the window of MTV is quirky. Everyone's cool. Everyone's smart. It's not true. What if the individual was the fake? What if the individual's the crock and we've actually been sold out by them, by the man, the establishment, whatever you want? Because what occurred to me is that when you talk about the individual and you deal with the individual, you find that the end of the individual is neurosis. To be individual means that there is self and not self. Okay? So where I stop, the boundaries of me, right, this physical body here, the boundaries of me that stretch out, things I believe in, things that I'm sure we'd all be friends if we talked, but would we be friends with Newt Gingrich? No. But that's the point. I stop when Newt Gingrich starts. Why is that? Why do I stop there? Why does he define my self-sense and I can't absorb him? Why do these fuckers, why does the Skull and Bones Society of the CIA, why do the 33rd degree Masons, why are they different from us? They're not. They want to explain things. They want an answer. They found an answer that seems to suit them, which seems kind of uncool and cruel to me because it involves exploiting other people. But they're looking for an answer. We're all looking for the same thing. Why are we here? Why are we? What are you doing here today? What do you expect? What do you expect to take home with you? Can anyone answer? There's one person tell me what you expect to take home from me from this. Come on, put your hand up. Yeah? Exactly, right, because that is all we have, and this is all I can offer you, is experience of having done this shit, tested it, put it in the crucible to see what happens, and it works. So I began to think more and more about the individual, and I looked into what that actually meant, and what it was a structure that was pretty much created, the ego structure was created out of what Julian Jaynes calls the bicameral mind, becoming one mind. And apparently, according to him, he says that back in the old days of the Greeks and the earliest writing in the world, people didn't have self-consciousness in the same way that we have. They didn't have egos. They didn't understand themselves as I in the same way we did, because the corpus callosum that connects the two hemispheres of the brain wasn't connected. So if you heard a voice, that voice was God. And Homer and all those guys have got plenty of examples of people hearing the voice of God and acting on it. Alexander constantly acted on the voice of God. Julian Jaynes suggests that it wasn't the voice of God, it was the voice of the left hemisphere of the brain communicating with the right hemisphere of the brain, interpreted as a God. So okay, now we've got the two things joined together. We've got this beautiful bridge in the middle that links the two. But we still have the ego structure, which was then created when those things linked, because suddenly we linked, oh fuck, I am that I am. This is my God is this, I am separate, I am one. We made this idea that was somehow separated from nature. No, bullshit. Again, I read New Scientist last month, right? New Scientist last month, they're talking about nature, we must control nature, we must do this. How do we deal with our relationship to nature? We are fucking nature. There's nothing on this planet that is not nature. Power stations are nature. Like atom bombs are nature, because nature made us to make those things. Either you trust nature or you don't trust nature, and I trust nature. Okay. So we have to assume, what is nature getting at here? If we ignore this crap that we're somehow isolated from nature, that we somehow have to tame nature, of course, nature knows exactly what it's doing. The planet is not in danger, we are. The planet will survive. The planet's been through like ammonia atmospheres and impossible to live on and everything dead, and it gets its way back out of it. We're in danger. Or so we think, because our hubris tells us that we are in danger. Our hubris tells us that we're about to destroy the world. We're going to wreck the planet. We'll fuck the atmosphere. No, we'll fuck our atmosphere. You know, some trilobites will come up and they'll be able to live in anything. We're standing here at the 21st century stuck with individuality because we believed in it so much. It seems so important that we should all be distinct. What happens if we stop being distinct? And what happens if we think about individuality as something that was actually just scaffolding for where we are now? So if you create a skyscraper, You put up your scaffolding, you build the building, and what's happened here is that we've overlooked the building. And focused on the scaffolding. You know, why aren't we taking the scaffolding down? Let's do it today. Take the scaffolding down. Because the individual is a way to get us to this point. And what I really think, and basically why I'm here, is to try and punt this notion. After doing this comic book for 6 years, after thinking about this stuff for 6 years, after proving that it works for 6 years, I'm left with this notion. We've been fooled, and we've fooled ourselves, and we continue to fool ourselves. And like Doug said, there is no us and no them, there's just us. And somehow we're trying to make this thing work, and it does work. Say, for instance, most of us here probably are pretty counterculture types. We've had some, we like our drugs, we like this and that, we like breaking a few rules. But we don't like the police in general. Who here loves the police? Hands up. Nice one. Because I'm going to teach you to love the police. Why do we hate path? I'm sure there's a bunch of people in here like me who eventually, you've worked your way through the stuff, you've read the books, you've done this shit, you've taken the drugs, you've been there, you've seen it, you've experienced enlightenment in little bits. You know it's out there, you know this stuff is true. The consensus doesn't explain our lives. But what does? Imagine getting rid of the individual. Imagine getting rid of that scaffolding. What do we have left? And here's what I'm about to offer. The more I looked into it, the more I began to see that we have these mutants living among us right now. The people from the 21st century, from the end of the 21st century, are here. But there is no context for them. In the same way that if you lived in Tunguska 200 years ago and you were an epileptic, you would be a shaman. There was a context for you. In this society, you're an epileptic. It's quite simple. It's a disease. Nothing you say is of any worth because it's pathology. If, on the other hand, you look at these people who are out there, who are the mutants, and what do they call it? Multiple personality disorder. This is what lies beyond the personality. This is what lies beyond the I, the bullshit. Because if you take I to the limit, and like I say, I'm sure a lot of us here have done this. It becomes, all that happens is self questions self. Endlessly, repetitively. Am I doing this right? Is this the right way? Should I think about these people like this? Should I approach them this way? Should I involve them this way? Self question self endlessly. It reaches a peak, it goes nowhere. On the national scale, that same thing, self questions self encounters not self equals borders, war, destruction. That's where it goes. That thing ends in disaster. It ends in neurosis on the personal level, and it ends in war on the national level. So I began to think, what could we replace that with? And I was looking at these poor MPD fuckers, and I realised they just don't have a context. What would happen if we decided to abandon the personality and replace it with a multiple personality complex? Because as we all know, everyone in here, I'm sure, I feel as if I can say this for certain, knowing human beings as they are, sometimes you do things that you don't want to do. Sometimes you do things that are contradictory to what you think. Sometimes you fuck yourself up. Why? Because there's not one person in here, there's hundreds. And if you start giving them names, and if you start shuffling them about, and you start playing with them, you become a bigger human being. Because you've no longer allowed yourself to stop at your boundaries. Imagine the personality as, well, let's choose Windows, even though this is a contentious one. Imagine the personality as Windows. Instead of the personality, there's so many people, I'm sure you've met them, you talk to them and say, no, this is the way I am, I've worked on this is me, and I won't change. And you just have to work with that, this is me, this is important, this is what I've come to, and this is what I've made of myself. Bullshit. They're trapped, they don't go anywhere, they're stuck there. What if those same people were then given personality 2000, which is an upgrade and an add-on? And here's a bit to your personality that likes hip-hop. Here's a bit to your personality that likes ballet. And because we've all got them, and because we've got the fucker, we've got the serial killer inside, we've got the wonderful new age bastard, we've got whatever we like, we've got James Bond in there, we've got Pussy Galore in there, they're all there. So what I'm suggesting is that we start working with it. Abandon the personality, abandon the individual, abandon the I, because it's a lie and it has held us down. It's been like a weight around our necks. It was useful for the last 2,000 years of history because it created this out of the chaos that was. And this is more coherent, more useful, more meaningful. It has its problems, everything does, every system has, but we're getting better. And I think what we should do is walk away from the crap of the 21st century and start thinking about what we've been experiencing. My feeling about the 21st century is, and about World War II and about Auschwitz and all that stuff, is that we had to go through it.
Oh, no? Perfect. I told you that. I heard you say something, but I was on a call.
Thinking about what we've been experiencing. My feeling about the 21st century is, and about World War II and about Auschwitz and all that stuff, is that we had to go through it. We had to do it. That was humanity's dark night of the soul, and it will never, ever happen again. But it had to happen. Every single nightmare image, every image of hell that we have in our minds happened. Everything you can think of happened. People were flayed, brutalised, gassed, tortured, cut into pieces, turned into pigs. Everything you can imagine happened. The world was a wasteland. There were cities completely annihilated. We went through it. Why did we do that? Stanislav Grof has a conception of the Perinatal Matrices, which was one of the big influences on the film The Matrix, so you might recognise some of this. He says that things that happen to us around birth are really profound in matrices. And World War II is actually a Stanislav Grof basic perinatal matrix 3 experience. Every image he talks about, death camps, control, the idea of babies trapped in tubes, you'll recognise all this from the Matrix, as I say. Oil, mechanism, machines that hate us, destructive technology, it all happened. What if this little baby that is the universe, this little larvae that's approaching culmination, has had to go through these stages? Because everything does. If you want to get rid of war, how do you get rid of war? Inoculate yourself against war by having the worst fucking war you've ever had in your life. And everything after that's just an abomination. Has had to go through these stages, because everything does. If you want to get rid of war, how do you get rid of war? Inoculate yourself against war by having the worst fucking war you've ever had in your life. And everything after that's just an aftershock. We've done nothing worse than what we did in those few years. Humanity's never come close to doing anything like it. We've tried, as a few lunatics have tried. Nothing on that scale. So what if we choose to imagine that humanity has passed through that stage? We've reached the 21st century. We're now reaching basic Perinatal Matrix 4, which is victory after war, which is the struggle is over, which is we're all here. What do we do next? There was no apocalypse. There was no Christ. There was no rapture. There is nothing. All this stuff is shit. There is only us, and we've still got another 1,000 years, and maybe another 1,000 beyond that, and maybe another 20,000 beyond that. What are we going to do? Who are we? Are we going to stick to these personalities, these bounded territorial things? Are we going to expand ourselves, make ourselves bigger, so that if you happen to like world music and I don't, I can tap into your love of world music and experience it, and it means something. So all I'm suggesting here is that we all take up magic, because basically it works. We can change the world. It's quite simple. The technology's there. The Buddhists have been telling us it. As I say, people have been telling us this for so long, and in the last 200 years it's been driven underground and we've forgotten, and people like us are here today to try and recover something of that. And the way to recover it is to do it. Do the techniques. Go and buy an Aleister Crowley book. Buy one with Phil Heiner, Peter Carroll, that's more up to date, and you don't have to bother with that 18th century fucking language of that guy. But do the shit, and you will find it works. And we stand here now. This is the counterculture. We are the counterculture. This is like this